Again, 6 months. Today marks 6 months since Helene tore through the South, causing devastation throughout the Southeast, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, 248 deaths nationwide, including 106 here in North Carolina, another 50 lives lost in South Carolina. We want to send it over to Vanessa Ruffes, who is live for us right now. Vanessa is at the River Arts District there. Vanessa, sort of walk me through. Before we get there, I mentioned this earlier yesterday about I just can't believe that it's 6 months. And Vanessa, you were there in Hickory at the airport where they were sort of, it was a meeting place for supplies and they were flying out to different areas. Talk about what you're doing there today.
Yeah, so Nick, as we mentioned, it's 6 months since Helene hit this community here in Asheville and so many others across our region. Hard to believe, right? I mean, it feels like there's been so much work done, but also so much work left yet to do. We're right now in the River Arts District in the Asheville area. Of course, we've talked about this area a lot over the last several months because this is a particularly hard-hit area. Some of the images that we saw coming out of here right after the storm were absolutely devastating. I mean, we were talking about flooding, buildings that looked like they were floating away, big piles of mud, lots of debris. And I have to say, it looks quite lovely here today. We are seeing kind of that message being driven home by some of the small businesses in this area and folks who are in charge of advocating for small businesses. The fact that, hey, we've done a lot of work here, we've cleaned up a lot, we've got a lot of businesses that are open right now. We've suffered a lot over the last few months, losing business, also just trying to recover from the storm. We want you to come and visit us, check out what we have to offer. We're here and we're waiting for you. And so that's what kind of we saw that really struck me as like a common thread that I saw with all of these businesses around here, because once again, this is an arts district, so we have a lot of galleries here, paintings, sculptures, so different types of artwork that's represented here in different types of businesses. But the one thing that we're seeing as we walk around this area is the fact that everyone has a sign outside on the sidewalk saying open for business, visitors welcome, come and stop by. So that's really something that we're seeing once again, the public being urged to do is stop by and visit. Yeah, you mentioned right after the storm, I personally was stationed out of the Hickory Airport. Really remarkable to see kind of the community outpouring and how this grassroots effort of Operation Airdrop came together with all these volunteer pilots that were tasked with basically going into inaccessible areas to rescue people and also drop off supplies. And these are very remote areas, and we were hearing just incredible stories of basically these volunteer pilots having to land helicopters wherever they could. And keep in mind, up in the mountains, that might be hard to do. You might have to land that helicopter far away and then hoof it on foot to the actual place where you're trying to save somebody. But that was just one way that we saw the community step up. And as the 6 months have passed since the storm, we're definitely seeing the needs evolving. So it went from just immediate survival and trying to stay alive to now we're seeing folks who are trying to get back to normalcy. And so they're needing support in a different way. So we talked about supporting small business, but also just other ways that we're still seeing volunteers trying to come out and help folks rebuild their lives, Nick.
And Vanessa, it's funny, my family, we were there a few months before, right where you were standing, visiting there, summer vacation. And like you said, it's such a beautiful area. And now it's the time where they start to prepare for that summer tourism. But it's got to be a balancing act between preparing for that, but also recovery efforts 6 months later. Did any of those businesses sort of mention that?
Well, I mean, I have to be quite frank. I mean, looking around, I see a lot of businesses open and they're like, come and see us. You talked about the fact that they're getting ready for, this next season of tourism and visitors. And we actually spoke with Explore Asheville yesterday, and they talked about while they still have yet to reopen, right? I believe, for example, the Grand Bohemian Hotel here in Asheville hasn't opened yet. It's set to reopen in May. So there's still some recovery left to do on that front. But they're saying, come and stop by. We have a full calendar where we've got things that you can come and see, performances that you can come and see. We have some trails that are starting to open up. The Blue Ridge Parkway has partially reopened. So they're saying, don't hesitate, because I know in the beginning, right, like right after the storm, we even heard, the governor saying, stay out of this area for now because they've got a lot of work to do. They've crossed that threshold, and they're saying, okay, we've done a lot of waiting. We're ready for you all to come and see what we have to offer and help us get back up to normalcy here. I mentioned the Blue Ridge Parkway. I was actually on it this past weekend. My family and I took a longer weekend, so like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to come up to the high country. We stayed a little bit to the west of here where we are now, so it was actually Highlands is where we went. But we took some time to explore the outdoors, and we actually took a little bit of a spin along the Blue Ridge Parkway. Not fully open. We actually were able to drive for a little bit on it and then came upon a road closure and had to hop off. But we did see a lot of folks actually taking advantage of the beautiful weather and the beautiful scenery, and the fact that some of the Blue Ridge Parkway had reopened. We know that's kind of part of a driving force of getting folks up to the mountains is, we know folks will come and take the scenery along this gorgeous parkway and then stop at some of the cities and towns along the parkway and maybe do some hiking in the area. So it was good to see that there were some folks starting to emerge after this cold winter that we went through, and they're starting to get outdoors and they're starting to enjoy some of this area, which is, partially built around recreation. So yeah, I guess I would once again just reiterate what we're hearing from leaders here is don't hesitate. We're still doing some rebuilding, but there's plenty open for y'all to enjoy and feel like you're still getting a great experience.
Yeah, Vanessa, we were looking at the video from up there. God, it is so beautiful up there. I asked Austin yesterday, Austin Walker, who spent some time up there just like you, covering the impact of Helene, about stories that sort of come to mind, that stick out. Hate to put you on the spot like this, but any stories that you've covered being up there in the last 6 months and talking to folks that stick out for you?
I mean, there's so many, and I mean, if you think about it, and I'm sure you're the same way, there are stories probably for you, Nick, where they stick in your mind because of maybe just the absolute heartbreaking circumstances of the story, and it just touches you and you're like, I'm never going to forget the situation. And in some cases it's stories of triumph, right, that stick with you and you're just like, I'm never going to forget this because it just showed me the absolute awesomeness of the human spirit. So I have a wide range of things that I think about when I think back on some of the stories that I've personally covered in the wake of Helene. For example, you mentioned my time at the Hickory Airport. I spent roughly a week over there immediately after Helene, and this is where we saw a group I alluded to before, Operation Airdrop, which had basically formed as a grassroots effort. So it was just a bunch of pilots who basically were helicopter pilots and also small plane pilots, and they just got together and they're like, well, there are a lot of communities up in the mountains that are hard hit. They're inaccessible. They've been cut off from the rest of the community. We should either get up there and bring them supplies so that they could stay alive, or in some cases they had medical situations. They had like nursing homes, for example, where you had a bunch of folks who could not stay in those conditions for a long period of time, and they were like, we're just going to go and get them. So I remember it was probably my second day at Hickory Airport where I was told that these helicopter pilots would be bringing in dozens of people from a nursing home up in Yancey County, and I believe they also, in a separate flight, went over to Mitchell County, and it was amazing to see. I was close to that tarmac area as those helicopters were landing, and seeing these folks that had been essentially freed from their nursing home where they were stranded. They were being well cared for, but they just couldn't stay there, but they were stranded, and being wheeled off of those helicopters finally to some safety, and the nursing home where they were staying, they actually had like a sister home, if you would, Will, in that immediate area. So they had staff who were ready to accept these folks and get them immediate medical care right there on the spot, and then give them a safe place to stay. And that was just really, really awesome to see. I spoke with so many folks with huge hearts at that airport that week. Sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional just thinking about it, but like, for example, there was a woman who was a nurse, and she works in Albemarle. Keep in mind, that is the opposite direction of the high country. So if you're like going from Charlotte, Albemarle is going to be way east of there, and then obviously way west is the high country, the mountains. And she would actually commute every single day to Hickory Airport just so she could help coordinate some of the collections of donations, for example, water and food and medical supplies. And she was really good at it, by the way. And I just thought of how much time and much effort and how much heart she put into this work, and it was clearly something that she believed in. And I was just amazed, and I felt so honored to have gotten to know her over those few days. But that's just one person, right? I mean, there were just dozens and dozens of folks like that who I met over that time frame. So yeah, some great stories of triumph. I mean, there were also some really heartbreaking ones that still stick with us, that aren't done even 6 months later. One that sticks with me is the story of Kim Ashby. We talked about, and I heard you mention, the death toll from Helene, where we had 106 folks in North Carolina who were killed because of Helene. We don't really think about this probably on a regular basis, over these, past few weeks, and months, but there are still 6 people who are missing. And I think about that, and I think about Kim Ashby's story. Shortly after the storm, we spoke with her family about her situation. She had a vacation home with her husband in Elk Park, and we know that's an area of Avery County that was hard hit as well, and that was cut off for a while because of some of the bridges that washed away. And apparently they had gone to that vacation home to make sure that it was secured and safe from the storm. And while they were there, essentially it sounded like the house blew away, and last anyone saw her, she was clinging to debris in the river, floating down the river. And for a long time, her family was putting out pictures of her, and we were helping. We were getting the word out about her being missing, and sharing and circulating her photo as well. And then finally in November, they just had to presume that she was dead. They never found her body. They presumed that she was dead, and they had a celebration of life without her body, and really not knowing whatever happened to her and what became of her. And 6 months later, as not all, but some people have moved on with their lives and tried to get back to normalcy after the storm, this family still doesn't know where she is, and they have to live with that. And so, I think about that sometimes, and how their hearts are probably still breaking on a daily basis knowing that. And once again, she is one of 6 people, so she's not the only person. Her family is not the only person or people who are having to kind of live with that reality. Nick?
Vanessa, I always say it's okay to be emotional about this, because this is our community. It impacts us. We're not robots out there as reporters, as journalists, covering these stories, because these stories impact us as well. Thank you for what you're doing out there, the stories you've been covering, Vanessa. I know we're going to talk to you throughout this stream and into our later newscast about what you're seeing there on the ground. But yeah, these stories really, really hit close to home. So that's Vanessa Ruffes out there in Asheville, the River Arts District, following up 6 months since, again, can't believe it, since Hurricane Helene hit western North Carolina and other parts of the Southeast. So yeah, very, very, as the community continues to recover, still emotional, still a lot going on there. So, Vanessa, we'll check back in with you later. Thank you.